This is what we're going to learn in this first lesson. This is a classic round base woven in pairing. Pairing is a very secure weave. It's very easy to control and it's very easy to shape with. I myself don't use pairing to weave entire bases. I only use it for the beginning and for the final locking round, as I like to call it. I prefer more aesthetic looking and finer weaves than pairing. Yeah, but nevertheless, if you're a beginner, I suggest making a decent amount of round bases in pairing before progressing to other methods, since pairing is a very basic and important technique to master, and it's hardly ever used outside of the base. Really, it's maybe bases and lids, but for the siding, pairing isn't used normally. So if you're not going to master this technique in bases, you will not have other chances to practice it on the siding. So yeah, I think we can begin now. So usually for the start, I like to have some shorter and thinner weavers because the thicker ones are not going to be very comfortable to work with in the beginning. So I don't know if you can see it. I've inserted the two weavers into the crack here, into the opening, and now we're going to start pairing. So I'm taking the first one from the back side. First one is going to be from the back side to the front side, like that. Second one comes from the front through the back and back to the front side. But when I come back to the front side, I have to make sure not to go over this other weaver here, like that. This is not good. I have to let it go and weave like that. And when you do all of this first round, all of this process has to be really tight. You have to get the sticks very close together and tight. So next move, very tightly through the back and back to the front. Through the back. I'm letting go of this one now, letting go of it, coming back to the front side, going through the back. Now, as you can see, we've finished our first round and we actually began our second round. When should we start separating the sticks? Basically, I can, in a 3x3 work, like here, I can start separating right after the first round. The more sticks I have in the base, I may want to do more rounds before I start separating, because the more sticks there are, the closer they are together and the harder it is to separate them. So here it doesn't matter. So I can start separating actually here from this one. But I'm not going to do that because these weavers are still a little too thick for me, in my opinion, to separate. So I'm just going to do another round, and when I finish it, they're going to be slightly thinner, and it's going to be easier to separate. So we finished 2 rounds here, and now we can begin to separate. So to do so, we have to pull the sticks to kink them into the side, and we begin in pairing. Behind and back to the front. Now, if you can see that, there's you can see through it. It's not very tight. So I'm going to take my bodkin here, and I'm going to tighten it using my bodkin like that. Now it's very, very fine. Next one, through the back and back to the front. Still now, I don't really like what I have here. You can see through this. So I'm going to take my bodkin and really tighten it out nicely. Great, beautiful. Let's just continue here. All right. Before I continue, I'm going to use my bodkin. Alright, but this doesn't look very good. Let's just go back there and see if we can do this. Alright, that's pretty decent, I guess. It's fine. Usually I like to make the bases. You will always weave the base on your lap. It's very comfortable. I like to have to sit on a very comfortable chair, lean back and do it. And many times I will press the base against my stomach like that, and I found that this is the most comfortable way for me to work. Alright, so this weaver had split, and we're going to have to replace it. So I have another thin rod here, and I'm just going to join from the front. I'm going to join this one where he gets out here, like that, and I'm going to continue with the new one and leave the old weaver there. This is what I would call a strong join. Alright, so we finished separating. Let's just trim these ends here. Now we just continue, and as we continue, we are going to do our best to even out the spaces between the sticks and to level all the sticks. We don't want one stick to be higher and one stick to be lower. They should be nicely leveled. In addition to that, usually I like to create a small arch towards the bottom, so I actually work on that and pay attention to that as I make my base. I don't always do it, but in this case I am going to do it. Now I'm also going to join here, because this is a thin rod and this is a tip and this is a butt, because I joined earlier. And now I'm actually going to show another type of join. No, actually, you know what? We're just going to join in the back for now. We leave the old weaver in the back, and then where it should get out here, the new one enters, and both ends are in the back. This is not a very strong join. It tends to jump a little bit. It doesn't hold itself in place until the next row goes over it and keeps it in place. But this to me is the best join for bases, because it gives us an upper side which is completely free of joins, and all the joints are at the bottom side, and we don't see them when we look into our basket. So let's just continue here. Don't forget to fasten your work and tighten it. Slowly evening out the spaces. Sometimes I like to work with the pliers like that when it's hard to manage with the butt end. Hope you can see what I'm doing here. Alright, so this should be replaced already, and we're replacing in the back. I'm going to replace both of these in the back, and I'm going to replace them now with longer and thicker pieces of willow. So I'm joining tip to butt here, like that, continuing with the next one, and once again joining in the back here. So this now is not going to hold itself in place. But that's fine, because when we go over it in the next round, it will be fixed in place. So now we just carry on. So now that I went over these joints here, I can cut them. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here. Now everything is more comfortable. These rods are starting to get thicker, and it's really hard to weave. If I sense that the work is getting too hard, I will just join before I get to the very end. Even though that might be a little wasteful, I don't want to work too hard. Let's just see what we got here. Sticks are evenly spaced, small arch towards the bottom. Perfect. Alright, so let's just replace this one. This is very thick. It's too thick for us now. So I'm just going to cut it here. I'm joining in the back here, if you can see that. This one should have continued and go out from here. So this is where I'm getting out of. In the back, I'm going to have the two ends jumping like that, and then in the next round we are going to fasten this joint. Once again, I'm going to join in the back. Now we are going to cover this joint here, and we have to apply some force to get everything to sit in place nicely. Beautiful. covered the second join here. When I join in the back like that, I don't like to do it with the really flimsy tips. Here it's also fine. This tip is also not very thin and flimsy, so it's fine to replace it like that. But if it were, I would probably insert more of the tip end towards the other side and start from a point in which the rod has, you know, some meat on it. But here it's fine. So we join one tip here. And now this one is getting too flimsy, so let's just replace it here. And this, as you can see, this is a pretty flimsy tip, so I'm going to insert a great deal of it towards the other side because I don't want this flimsy tip here on this type of join. All of these tips at the bottom are in my way, so I'm just going to cut them. I hope you can see what I'm doing here. The cuts could be very close, and you shouldn't be afraid that they're going to jump out. They won't jump. All right. The longer the rods, the weavers are, the bigger the difference between butts and tips is going to be. This is yet another reason why you shouldn't really use those very end of the ends of the tip ends, because when you have one row that's very thin and then the next row very thick, it doesn't look good. You want the weave to be more or less even. So this I think is fine, the difference between this and this. But when the difference is greater than this, it starts to look bad. So you want to pay attention to this. Maybe don't work with very long weavers, or simply get rid of either the tip or the butt end in a way that evens out the thickness a little more. Alright, so now we're going to join butts again. I'm joining in the back here. Now this there are, of course, other types of joins which hold themselves better in position than this. This, as you can see, simply jumps upwards. But this, as I said, looks the most beautiful. It gives the most clean and aesthetic look from the upper side. No joins. Beautiful. Since nothing is going to hold this last join here in place, maybe the very tip ends here, but they're not really going to hold it in place. I'm going to make just the last join differently. So I have to make the first one here. Now there are two types of joins that we can make here. I'm going to show this classic version first. This is what I would call a strong join, or I guess it could also be called a classic join, as it is the join most used in whaling bands. So as you can see here, the new weaver goes underneath the old and gets out from the other side here. So this is actually a two-sided join. We have one end here and one end here. Now we're just continuing with the new rod. Now let's join the second one. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here. I want to replace this. Let's move this out of the way. So I'm pulling it outwards a little bit and getting in underneath it or behind it, just like that, and continuing on with the new rod. This is a join that holds itself in place. It doesn't jump. The downside for it is that you're going to see the trimmed end in the inside, in the upper side. Spaces are not very even here. I haven't done a good job evening out the spaces. Let's see if we can do something about it now. Alright, so yeah, we are actually going over this because it's a relatively small base. But these tip ends here are not really going to hold it nicely if we had done the one-sided join in the back. So it's okay to have just these two joins that are going to be visible from the upper side. Now to finish off, this one is finishing. I'm going over this stick here, and getting inside here. So from the back, and instead of going out regularly like that, I'm threading it through like this. Now the next one goes like this, and I'm threading it through here. Sometimes I actually use my pliers here to fasten it, and this doesn't go anywhere. So this is how we finish with the tips. It's a very neat finish. You can hardly tell it's there. Now we can just trim off the ends. These ends are not leaning upon a stake, they're just leaning upon the weavers here. Also here, the cuts are not leaning upon a stake in this type of join. Beautiful. So there we have it. This would be a classic base in pairing. Oh my god, look at this. And it has a little arch towards the bottom. All of the joints are in the bottom except from these two here. And it looks very, very clean. The spaces are more or less evened out. I haven't really done a good job here evening out the spaces between the sticks, but we'll do a better job next time.